Blog Talk Radio.
Hey, everybody listening to the Independent Corner. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and tonight we have an awesome guest. We've got Thunder Levin here. Thunder, how you doing?
I'm pretty tired, Jonathan, but I'm doing okay.
It's been an exhausting week for you, pretty much.
It's been a whirlwind. It's been an extraordinary, incredible, exhausting, exhilarating ride, let me tell you.
A whirlwind, so it's pretty much been a Sharknado for you yourself,
yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're getting jokes and stuff like that all the time now.
It's fun. It's fun, though.
Yeah. So first off, I wanted to bring up the fact that, well, obviously, the big question that everybody asks you, and everybody in your whole, kind of your life has asked you that your actual real name is Thunder. My big question is, how did that affect you at school? It's like kid, during roll call and
right. It was always an interesting time. What's interesting is that kids actually made more fun of my middle name, which is Duncan, when they found out. I think because they knew I didn't particularly like it. And with Thunder, once you get past, do you have a brother named Lightning or something to that effect, I guess there aren't many places to go with it. And so fortunately, it's been okay. But it's always there's always a conversation when I'm introduced to somebody, because everybody has to ask about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I brought it up, because a lot of people probably that listen to my show maybe not have heard some of your interviews and other things that you said it before. So, of course I had to bring it up. Now, I heard that you were a still photographer for Roger Corman.
That was one of my first jobs when I moved to Los Angeles. I worked on 3 films for Roger. Saturday the 14th Strikes Back, Strip to Kill 2, Live Girls, and Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2. So they were all sequels.
Oh, wow. And how was it to, like any crazy stories on the sets?
I guess the only Roger Corman story about him personally was on the first day of Strip to Kill 2, he took me aside and he said, be sure to get lots of nude shots. That's how we'll sell the film. In that voice of his. And I said, yes, sir. I have no problem with that. And
I hope you did. You listened to him and got as many as you could.
Oh, of course.
Now, was that kind of were you a photographer yourself before then? Had you done regular photography before you worked for Roger?
Yeah, I had all through high school and college I'd been doing photography. And then my first job out of college in New York before I moved to L.A. was as a commercial photographer's assistant. And I was doing some of my own glamour-type photography at that point, too. So it was a natural thing to do as a day job and to try and get onto film sets and see how professional productions were run as soon as I could.
Awesome. Now let's go on to Mutant Vampire Zombies from the Hood, which I mistyped before and called From Hell, but From the Hood. After I've seen it, I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. It was just one of those B-movie, goofy, fun stories. Though I could have done without the vampire in the title, to be honest.
Well, my feeling was it had to have 3, because that 3 is the funny number, and don't ask me why. It's something about human nature. But whenever you're doing something like that, you kind of need to have 3. And so I spent a lot of time, and a bunch of us did, talking about it and what different things can we throw together to make the title explanatory but also funny, and to convey the fun time that we want to have. In a way, it's sort of a precursor to Sharknado, because it was the same similar approach, that there was still a disaster and the characters within the film had to, still really be in that situation. They weren't winking at the camera. But at the same time,
Right.
It's a self-aware film, and the audience and the filmmakers are in on the joke.
Right.
They really, to be completely accurate, it would have been mutant vampiric zombies from the hood, because the zombies don't necessarily eat brains. They eat flesh and they suck blood, but they're not vampires. Right. They are zombies who do that. So, if you want to nitpick about it, I suppose it would be vampiric.
And then they also talk, which is not normal of zombies. Exactly.
Well, only a certain subsection of them talk, and that's explained in the movie.
Okay. So tell us what it was like to work with C. Thomas Howell.
Tommy is a riot to work with. We were always cracking up on the set. He was always funny. And he's very dedicated to his craft, and we had a great time. He was really cool to work with.
He's one of those actors that can take a movie like this and really make it completely work. Some actors or actresses, they're doing it because they're getting paid to do it or something like that, And you can kind of tell.
We weren't paying Tommy all that much, so if he wasn't into it, it wasn't going to work out.
Okay. But now, is it available for people to rent or buy?
Well, you can buy a DVD directly from the film production company by going to www.mutantvampirezombiesfromthehood.com, and that way the company that made the film actually sees all of the profits. You can also buy it through Amazon. You can buy it through Amazon Instant Download. You can still get it on Netflix streaming, but you can't get the DVD from Netflix. So there are lots of ways to get it.
Awesome. Now let's talk a little bit about how did you end up working with the Asylum?
I had known David Latt for years. We had a mutual friend who introduced us. We worked on one project, God, I don't even remember how many years ago. It had to be 15 years ago now. The one project that we tried to get going that never actually happened, and then he got busy with the Asylum, and we sort of stayed in touch over the years. And it wasn't until I made Mutant Vampire Zombies from the Hood and showed it to him that it sort of convinced him that I could do what I'd been telling him I could do for years. And so after seeing that, he sort of put me in touch with the Asylum's development department, and they had me write a script called 200 Miles Per Hour, which they needed very quickly. And I think I wrote it in 10 days. And then that got produced. And then from there, the next one I wrote and directed. In fact, I went into 200 Miles Per Hour under the mistaken belief that I was going to be directing it. And then as we got into the process, I discovered that they already had a director attached. And so it was agreed then that the next one I would write and direct. And so I've made a couple of films for them now, and written a couple more.
All right, awesome. Now let's talk. You said that 200 miles per hour.
I'm sorry, I should clarify for those who don't know. David Ladd is one of the partners of the Asylum.
Yeah, he's one of the producers.
Yeah, he's one of the
producers.
founders, basically. He and David Ramaui, right. And now they have a third partner named Paul Bales.
Yeah, and now you said that 200 miles per hour is written very quickly in 10 days. Was that the fastest script you had written for them, or did you write any others faster than that? Yeah, no, that's the fastest script I've ever written. And up until that point, I had never written a script in less than 2 months. And at our initial meeting where it was agreed that I would write this, and then they said, okay, we need it in 2 weeks. Actually, I think they said the deadline was 12 days away. And I was throwing a Christmas party a day after that. And so I couldn't even start on the script for 2 days. And so then I just locked myself to my computer, basically, and I worked until I had, I think I required myself to write 10 pages a day until I was done. And then I had 1 day to do revisions. You 1 day to do revisions. Now, do they give you, did they give you a lot of notes beforehand? Yeah, well, they have a very strict process that they go through for every script, and they start off with a one-sentence description that they will give you, and in this case, it was, I guess basically they just asked me to write a movie about illegal street racing, and they wanted it to be called 200 miles per hour Midnight Racers. But then they told me that no more than 5% of the film could take place at night. So eventually the Midnight Racers thing was dropped, and it was just 200 miles per hour. And so they want you to present them with a one-paragraph pitch, basically. This is what the movie will be like. And they approve that, and then they have you write a one-page synopsis, and if they approve that, they have you write a 3-page outline. And, of course, there are notes at each stage. And then after the 3-page outline is approved, then you go and start writing the script. Now, I do have to ask, Sharknado's, that development process. I guess we'll get into that when we get into the Sharknado bit. Okay. American Warships, which originally I believe was called Battleships. Well, the working title was Battleships. That was never going to be the title of the movie. That's just what we called it internally. The first official title was American Battleship. And then it was changed to American Warships. Now, was that the first time that you kind of dealt with a lawsuit on your hands, or I guess it's not on you? I wasn't involved in the lawsuit. The lawsuit was only about the title and the marketing campaign. It never touched on the content of the film because our story was completely different. It's not like there was ever any question of copyright violation or anything. So it really didn't involve me, and since it never proceeded, it never went to court or anything, I was never really involved in that. The first time I had heard about American Warships was when my friend James Fury was going to be working on it and everything. What? No, go ahead. You weren't. I was going to say, he was he had called me and told me about the audition that he had for it and everything. And then when I heard he got the part, I was like, wow, that's really cool. Actually, he was supposed to come up to Virginia and shoot something. And then I said, dude, take that. He was supposed to shoot something for me. Oh. Well, James is a great guy, and I'm glad we had him. Yeah, he was hilarious. His part was great, and he did a great job, and I was really proud to see a friend of mine, up on the screen and everything, and was very glad that you were able to work with him.
Yeah, no, he was great to work
with
with, and we've remained friends since the shoot. I mean, we're 3,000 miles apart, but still, we stay in contact with on Facebook and everything. He's a great guy.
Yeah. Now, what is the craziest story that you have on set of that film?
Oh God. You know, I'm sorry, I'm just not coming up with anything. I can tell you that it was really cold. We went to North Carolina to shoot that, but it was in December, and we would be out on the battleship deck before sunrise, and it was freezing cold. That's the main thing I remember. There was one point during the shoot, after about a week or so, where you work really long days on these low-budget shoots because the whole movie has to be filmed in 3 weeks. And there was one point where we were standing out there on the deck of the battleship, and I didn't care how the shot went. I didn't care if we made our day. I didn't care how the film turned out. I didn't care what happened to the rest of my career. All I wanted was to be warm and to sleep. And yet somehow I kept going. And what's funny is that one of the 3 battleships we looked at was actually the USS Massachusetts, which naturally is in Massachusetts. And we chose not to shoot there because I pretty much put my foot down. I said, look, this is going to be a giant steel ship in Massachusetts in December. It's going to be a meat locker. We're not going to be able to make that work. And thank God, because North Carolina was cold enough.
Why didn't you guys shoot in Florida, right?
Yeah, there are no battleships in Florida, so we had to go where the battleships were.
Oh well.
There was
now,
one
how
in
much
Hawaii.
Of it was...
The USS Missouri is at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, but getting permission from the military to shoot there was going to take months, and we didn't have months to wait, so it didn't happen.
Yeah. Sorry about that. That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Now, Apocalypse Earth and Sharknado, were those both written at the same time or about the same time?
Just about, yeah. I was I was talking with the Asylum about 3 different projects at the same time. First, they came to me with they wanted me to write a movie called Shark Storm, and it was going to be about a shark attack during a storm, and it was going to be a perfectly straight movie, and I turned it down. It just didn't interest me. And so then we moved on to Atlantic Rim, which was going to be giant monsters against robots. And at first I was sort of intrigued by that because I've always been a big Godzilla fan, and I thought that might be fun. But I wanted to do the monsters as men in rubber suits. I didn't want to do CG monsters. And there was some question as to whether that really made any sense. And then they came back to me with Sharknado, and they said they really wanted me to write it. And so I took that on, but at the same time we kept talking about Atlantic Rim. And while I was writing Sharknado, it was really getting out of hand. I mean, the truth is that my script for that film is probably $100 million film. It's just insane. And as I was writing it, even though part of our agreement was that I would get to direct it, or at least I would be the first director presented to Sci-Fi for approval. It was just getting so big that I wasn't entirely sure how it was going to work. And at the same time, I was starting to feel like what I really wanted to do was a serious science fiction film. I wanted to create a whole world. I think I'd been watching Game of Thrones, and I was just really into the whole alternate reality thing and creating a whole world of my own. And so I went in. I guess I was finishing up Sharknado, and I went into the office and I talked to Micho Rutari, who's the director of development at the asylum. And I said, Atlantic Rim would be a lot of fun, but I think what I really want to do is something where I can create a whole world. And he said, well, I just happen to have a project called AE, and the entire description is a group of refugees from Earth have to survive on a hostile alien planet. And that was such broad parameters that I felt like I could really do something interesting with that. And so I decided to switch from Atlantic Rim to AE, and I'm glad I did, because I really enjoyed the process of making AE, and I think it's kind of a cool little movie.
Yeah, it definitely is. And would you see that, like, which one, when you look back at both the two ones, like American Warships and AE, which one would you prefer to watch yourself?
That's like asking a parent who's their favorite child. All three of my directorial works I like equally in different ways.
Good answer.
Mutant Vampire Zombies is a lot of fun. American Warships, I think it has a sort of a nice formal theatrical style to it. It sort of reminds me, my approach was a lot like the original Star Trek. I felt like it was sort of, stylistically at least, it was a lot like a Star Trek episode for me. And then AE was just this sort of immersive experience, and it was very fast-paced, and the action basically never stopped from beginning to end. And, that was really cool and exciting too. So I really couldn't choose one from the other.
Oh, great. Now, Sharknado. Let's get into that. We got about 8 minutes left of the show.
Okay.
I want to talk. I like that Ian Ziering's name in the movie. It's Finn. I think that's a nice touch there. Did anybody else ever say anything to you about that?
That's funny because all through the process I was waiting for somebody to say something, and it was never brought up once. And I wasn't sure if people just didn't get it or if it was just so obvious that there was no need to comment on it. But that actually nobody mentioned that even once. Well,
there you go. No, I did. I noticed that when I first heard it, I kind of chuckled. And I was like, that's kind of funny. Especially he's a surfer, out with the sharks, or whatever. So it's kind of, nice touch there.
It was a way to signal early on that we were going to be having fun with this, I think.
Right, and you also did that with a lot of the Jaws references. Now,
of course,
I noticed
three. I think you can't make a shark movie without paying homage to Jaws. I think it's sort of required.
Well, I watched it. I watched the movie with my Jaws T-shirt on.
Excellent.
Now, did you how many Jaws references did you do? Homages did you do? I counted 3. But did you write more than that?
Yeah, there was a fourth one in the opening sequence. The boat captain. But I should tell you that whole opening sequence on the boat was invented by Anthony Ferrante, the director. All I had in the script was this Mexican fishing boat caught in a hurricane, and the captain is at the wheel, and he looks up at this giant wave looming over them, and he sees that it's filled with sharks, and he says, "Necesito un barco más grande," and then the wave washes over them, and sharks eat them all. And of course, that's just Spanish for "I need a bigger boat." So that would have been the fourth Jaws reference.
You ended up getting the we need a bigger chopper line in there.
So I did it twice, but I figured it was okay since once was in Spanish.
And nobody would really know unless you put subtitles there, right?
Right.
Now, it was the other one that I was, the tank scene, where the tank blowing up. and also
Right.
with the scar scene. So I guess
Right.
yeah. So you said there's about.
Well, I mean, if you think about it,
that...
her scar and explaining the scar is, obviously it's the Indianapolis speech. And in the first draft of my script, I actually transcoded the entire Indianapolis speech from Jaws, and basically I just changed the facts of it to fit the story of her being a little girl on this fishing boat with her grandfather. But it was the entire Indianapolis scene. And the guys at the asylum said, you can't do that. It's like a page and a half long, and this is an asylum movie. It's not Jaws. So we kept whittling it down and whittling it down and whittling it down until it was what you saw in the movie. And actually, you know what? I take it back. There's another Jaws reference. The dog that's locked in the car that George smashes the window and rescues, that dog's name is Pippet. And you actually, if you listen closely, you can hear the owner call the dog's name Pippet once. And that was the dog in Jaws that got eaten. And so I was determined that this time Pippet was going to survive.
Awesome. No, actually, technically, you never see that the dog in Jaws, No,
you don't. But
you just assume.
It's inferred. Yeah, it's inferred.
Yeah. Now, let's see. Well, one thing I wanted to mention now, and tell me if this is something that I'm sure you get, asked about after the movie, but the scene between the father and daughter, when she's upset about the fact that her, and this is spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, so please, turn your ears off or whatever. But when she gets kind of like upset about, the fact that she wasn't as loved as her brother, were you asked to throw that in, or did you decide to throw that in for character development, or?
I actually didn't write that scene. Anthony added that on the set, and I never really, I haven't had a conversation with him about that particular scene, about why it was done. I didn't have that in the script. I just had her as sort of a typical teenager. We didn't really get into that.
I think I understood why he did it, but then in the same sense, I can understand, to me, it kind of slowed it down a little bit, but maybe that's one thing, of reason why he wanted to do it, is give a little bit more depth to the characters, but also when he goes to save his, daughter, it gives him, it gives them a little bit more, to work off of, because, so, I mean, I agree with what he did with it. Honestly, I was like, if you had cut that out, then I don't think, people would have, either way, added it in or cut it out, it wouldn't have, affected the story too much.
Sure.
That's why I wanted to ask if you had written it or not. I guess that's, Sharknado takes Manhattan.
Sci-Fi is asking people to suggest titles for it. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, everybody's coming up with every conglomerate title they can. Of the ones I've seen on Twitter, my favorite so far has been Snailquake, because it'll be slow moving, so we'll have time for character development. But actually, the title that I like is not one of these two-word things. I think it should be called Sharknado 2 Live on Broadway. But that's just
that should be interesting.
Because they want it set in New York, so
right.
It just sort of made sense to me.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. It's about time for the show to end. Thank you, Thunder. Is there anything that you'd like to say to everybody before you head off?
Well, thanks for watching and thanks for tweeting. I mean, what's happened with Sharknado in the last week has been an extraordinary thing brought about entirely by people, by the public. I mean, no marketing department on earth could have accomplished this. It was something that happened spontaneously and naturally, and it was just a wonder to behold. And so I'm deeply in debt to everybody who tweeted about it and talked about it and watched it, of course.
All right. Well, thank you so much, sir. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. When you have something else coming up, let me know, and we'll have you back on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, dude.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. That was Thunder Levin. Check next week. I'll have Jack Perez hopefully on the show. He's the director of Las Vegas, which is the other sci-fi original movie that just aired tonight, and check that out. So, yeah, and hope you guys are having a great night, and hope you enjoy the show. Bye.